The Dominion fleet gathered like a crown of arrogance above the shattered rim. Gold banners unfurled against the black, each emblazoned with the sigil of victory. 32 species united in dominion over what they called the lesser echoes of the past. Admiral Vorith leaned forward in his command throne, talons tapping against the armrest. Holopheds shimmered across the air, ancient Terran hulls drifting in low orbit over rust-red worlds. Their lines were square, inelegant, their metal unpolished. No energy signatures worth noting. Relics, Vorith said, laughter rippling through the command deck. They send their museums to die. Across 12 systems, Dominion officers repeated the line. The broadcasts went live within minutes, mockery framed as ceremony. Commentators compared the human fleet to museum debris held together by nostalgia. Billions watched. Billions laughed. But beneath that laughter was the sound of targeting locks arming. 37,000 plasma batteries aligned on the archive worlds, where human data still rested in planetary vaults older than the Dominion itself. Their objective: erase the myth, burn the memory, end the archive era. Commence the cleansing, Vorith ordered. The flagship's lances fired first. Beams of violet plasma streaked toward the nearest planet, cutting through its upper atmosphere in precise bands. The surface blossomed into light-measured, efficient destruction. Data towers folded in on themselves. Libraries turned to glass. 5,000 terabytes of primitive history, said the sensor officer, deleted. Applause filled the bridge. They drank to efficiency. They drank to control. They drank to forgetting. In a darkened corner, a transmission delay blinked. A single untagged data burst left the dying planet, carrying no sound, just a pulse, faint and rhythmic. Vorith noticed. Another relic signal? He asked. Likely an automated distress ping, Admiral. He smirked. Let it transmit. The ghost can scream into the void for all I care. The bridge lights dimmed as Dominion forces shifted to Phase 2. Across the Orion Reach, 14 more fleets prepared synchronized bombardment runs. They spoke of humanity as if it were a disease long cured. Centuries without a counterattack, an aide said. Their infrastructure decayed. Their colonies empty. Even their moons are silent. Silence, Vorith said, is the language of extinction. Outside the viewport, human warships drifted like abandoned monuments. Hulls pitted, engines cold, no shields detected. One of them, a massive carrier stamped with TNS Valiant, spun slowly on its axis, light reflecting off a scar that ran the length of its flank. The Dominion ships closed in. 50 kilometers. 10. Target acquisition complete, said the weapons officer. Voreth raised his hand. Record the final sequence. History must witness its own correction. Across the ComNet, laughter returned high, confident, cruel. Every fleet captain joined the chorus, 1,000 voices wrapped in superiority. The broadcast spread again, carrying a single message across the stars. The era of relics ends today. Below. The Valiant's shadow turned with imperceptible precision. Its engines flickered once. Vorith didn't see it. A faint whisper of light crossed the Dominion sensors, too slow to be energy, too structured to be debris. Then, on every console, human glyphs began scrolling in silence. Old Terran code. Translation failed. The Dominion fleet laughed louder, unaware they had already been scanned, mapped, and archived in return. Humanity's ghosts were not watching. They were listening and remembering. The envoys arrived at Sol under banners of diplomacy, their ships gleaming like temples of reason. 12 vessels, each carrying an emissary from the Galactic Coalition, drifted into orbit around the pale blue sphere that once pulsed with human noise. Their transmissions filled every channel, formal, rehearsed, triumphant, "This is the final summons," said Chancellor Arvik of the Velari Dominion. "By authority of the Unified Concord, humanity is ordered to disarm and surrender all remaining orbital assets." Static answered. The transmission repeated on 3 frequencies. Then 6. Then 12. No voice returned. Beneath them, Earth rotated in silence. The orbital junk belt shimmered faintly, countless fragments glinting like the dust of forgotten wars. The envoys noted the debris density, filed it as hazardous but inert. None of them realized that half those fragments were tracking nodes, each one dormant and waiting. "Perhaps they've forgotten how to respond," joked the Seraph delegate, his crest feathers curling in amusement. "The relics probably still use analog code." Laughter filled the bridge. Arvik frowned. "Proceed with visual mapping. I want every active satellite cataloged." The scanners swept outward. Power readings spiked in unexpected places: old shipyards at Luna orbit, decommissioned dry docks, the wreck of the TNS Hephaestus resting in solar drift. The data confused the analysts. None of it aligned with standard decay patterns. Residual energy from pre-collapse reactors? Asked the technician. Arvek nodded slowly, though his brow furrowed. Unlikely to persist for 2 centuries. The silence deepened. On every frequency, on every diplomatic band, there was only the sound of open space. No acknowledgement. No pulse. Then the grid moved. At 216 standard, the Luna dry docks flickered to life. Old scaffolds rotated into alignment with mathematical precision, forming a lattice of silver arcs. A faint electromagnetic hum began to pulse through the void, synchronized across 5 million kilometers. "Are they ... activating something?" The Seraph envoy whispered. Telemetry data cascaded across the consoles. 37 dormant defense platforms, once classified as memorial relics, began repositioning in 3-dimensional symmetry. Orbit paths stabilized. Angles aligned with planetary poles. A lattice network, ancient, silent, and complete. No heat signatures, the sensor officer said quickly. No active propulsion. It's automatic mechanical. Arvik hesitated. Mechanical doesn't form perfect geometry. At 218, the solar side of Earth lit up in infrared bloom. Thousands of tiny glints reflected sunlight, revealing microshields coalescing from dust clouds like a slow, deliberate breath after centuries of stillness. Across the diplomatic fleet, tension shifted to disbelief. "This can't be deliberate," muttered the envoy from the Chiral Assembly. "Those systems were scrapped before the last Terran census." The silence answered again, now deliberate, now heavy. At 220, the first encrypted ping reached them. A single packet of data. 1 line of code. Human standard. Translation complete. Standby. Defense grid calibrating. The envoys froze. Arvik's mouth opened, but no sound came. The broadcast continued, repeating every 10 seconds on every diplomatic channel. The code included timestamps, precision to the millisecond evidence of synchronization across thousands of dormant platforms. What's their power source? The Chiral envoy demanded. Not fusion, said the sensor officer. It's drawing solar and magnetic induction. Something in the planetary field. Arvik leaned back, the weight of realization forming behind his eyes. They built this long before we arrived. The silence was no longer passive. It was procedural. At 225, the human network expanded to include Mars, Io, and the Belt. Dead colonies lit faintly in electromagnetic patterns, their satellites turning like synchronized eyes toward Sol. A final transmission emerged, brief and emotionless, from an orbital relay older than the Dominion itself. Communication suspended. Humanity is observing. Every envoy fell quiet. The silence from Terra was no longer absence. It was judgment. The Dominion fleet opened fire at dawn over Mars, a sunrise made of plasma. Thousands of beams lanced across the void, converging on the old Terran defensive ring, a chain of battered orbital citadels, built before most of the attacking species had learned fusion. The energy output registered at 4.3 petajoules per second. Nothing alive could survive that. For 11 seconds, the sky burned. Admiral Vorith stood at the center of his command bridge, talons clenched around the rail. Target sectors 3 through 7. Leave nothing but molten metal. The order spread through 73 battle groups. Weapon matrices aligned. 1,000,000 kilometers of light hammered the relic fleet until every Dominion sensor read total destruction. Radiation blooms, kinetic dispersion, atmospheric ionization, perfect signatures of annihilation. Confirmed hits across all vectors, said the gunnery officer. No return fire detected. Vorith exhaled, almost disappointed. So ends the myth. Then the light stopped bending. A wavefront rolled back through the combat zone, silent, structured, impossible. Dominion sensors began feeding nonsense. Negative energy differentials, inverted charge flows, localized gravitational fluctuations. One of the junior analysts choked on the numbers. Admiral? It's reflecting. What? Not reflecting, absorbing. Their field geometry is changing the phase of our beams. 98% of energy is being converted. Vorith turned toward the viewport. The relic fleet, black against the dying red of Mars, was still there. Not melting. Not even scorched. On screen, the TNS Valiant rotated, hull plating unfolding like petals. The violet plasma that had struck it now coiled around it in glowing rivers. Absorbed into hexagonal nodes that pulsed faintly with Terran blue, telemetry confirmed it. 98.1% energy retention. Thermal bleed, 0. Emission pattern, harmonic, stable. Impossible. Vorith whispered. Across the command net, Dominion ships began reporting overloads. Energy weapons were shorting mid-cycle, feedback loops frying sensor grids. The fleet's coordinated firing sequence collapsed in under 30 seconds. Signal analysis. Vorith barked. Their field harmonics are modulating faster than our targeting AI can predict. They're using our fire as calibration input. A punchline appeared across every tactical display. A line of Terran code overlaying the Dominion's targeting maps. Effectiveness logged. Thank you for your data. Vorith's claws cut through the metal rail. They're mocking us. On the outer ring, the second wave of Dominion ships tried kinetic bombardment, solid slugs moving at relativistic speed. The rounds hit the Terran field and vanished without visible impact. Energy conversion climbed another fraction, 98.3%. Within the Valiant, harmonic nodes pulsed once more, dispersing absorbed plasma through the network. Arcs of refracted energy crawled across the fleet, binding the formation in geometric light. Then they returned it, not as a weapon, not yet, but as resonance. Dominion sensors overloaded instantly, turning every ship's interface into static. Crew members screamed as display surfaces glowed with Terran runes. Shut down targeting. Cut emissions. Too late. Each ship that had fired now carried the echo of its own assault stored within its hull. Capacitors detonated in sequence. Shielding collapsed. Across the battle space, human telemetry logs recorded at all angles. Durations, yields cold, methodical, absolute. The comnet filled with the sound of confused breathing. For the first time, no one laughed. Vorith looked back at the blue-lit ruins of his assault line. How are they doing this? No one answered. The relic fleet didn't advance. It didn't broadcast demands or triumph. It simply adjusted orbit, energy signatures evening out to a tranquil equilibrium. one of the Dominion officers whispered. "They took everything we threw at them and just stored it." Another murmured, "What if they give it back?" Vorith's voice broke its calm for the first time. "All ships retreat 10,000 clicks, now." The old Terran network pulsed once. Brighter than before, measured, restrained, merciful. As if granting them time to understand. It began with silence. Then movement that broke every known equation. At 3 o'clock standard, Dominion long-range sensors reacquired the relic fleet 32 ships aligned in a diamond formation over Mars by 3:01. That formation was gone, not scattered, shifted. The fleet reconfigured mid-orbit, geometry folding inward. Thruster signatures multiplied in fractal patterns. Acceleration curves spiked beyond what biological pilots could survive. Dominion analysts shouted over each other, recalibrating instruments that refused to settle. "Telemetry glitch," one said. "No impossible vector." Another screamed. 32G acceleration. No biological tolerance recorded. Admiral Vorith stared at the board, claws flexing. "Track them." "Sir, the sensors can't. They've multiplied trajectory paths into chaos." Every Dominion screen became a storm of predictive lines. Thousands of glowing threads curling in impossible orbits. The human fleet had turned its movement into a weapon data saturation warfare. Each change of course generated ghost echoes that bled into Dominion targeting AI. Within seconds, the system crashed into redundancy loops, painting thousands of false Terran positions across the grid. Then came the rail signatures. 8 ships from the Terran. Vanguard fired kinetic rounds. Nothing exotic tungsten rods, 1 meter wide, 30 long. But their velocities were obscene. Light delayed by mere milliseconds couldn't keep up. Impact time? Uncertain. Calculations looped infinitely. Dominion officers stared at screens showing red overlays of inconclusive velocity. The first projectile hit. A soundless flash across a Dominion carrier's hull. No energy detonation, no radiation spike. Just a hole clean, surgical, final. The kinetic slug exited through the opposite side, vaporizing structural decks without even slowing. At 3:05. Dominion fleet strength dropped by 2%. By 3:06. It dropped by 5. "They're using pure mass," whispered the Velari tactician. "No heat, no plasma trail, just trajectory math." "We can't jam it." Vorith's voice was flat. "Return fire." Beams lashed out, wide, desperate. The human fleet danced between them, trajectories bending in ways unbound by inertia. Their thrust control was absolute gravitic compensation at planetary levels. HULLs moving like thought, not machinery. Dominion AI tried to adapt, projecting future intercept points. Each time it did, the Terran split again, duplicating vectors until prediction became meaningless. 32 ships, the sensor officer stammered. "But our arrays read 3,000 separate kinetic signatures. They're simulating fleet-scale multiplicity." Vorith didn't answer. He was watching a live tactical feed Terran warship spiraling around Mars like controlled debris, lines of blue exhaust curving through red dust storms below. Every arc intersected perfectly, every motion part of a pre-designed doctrine. A name scrolled across the captured. Telemetry. Acceleration doctrine active. In the darkness, the TNS Valiant surged forward, hull stress climbing past theoretical tolerance. Its engines burned white, then color shifted into ultraviolet. Dominion monitors blacked out. Radiation filters melted from overload. One stinger line of Terran text pulsed through the chaos. Velocity is intention. The next 3 minutes were unfilmable by any Dominion lens. Every frame blurred into compression noise, sensors blinded by overlapping motion vectors. When the systems rebooted, The relic fleet had reappeared on the far side of Phobos 40,000 kilometers from its last known position. Dominion analysts called it teleportation. It wasn't. It was acceleration so precise that it bent perception itself. Contact lost again. A technician cried. Their heat traces vanished, engine signatures zeroed out. Vorith's breath came slow, almost reverent. They're not running. They're maneuvering between our expectations. In that moment, every Dominion ship became a blind target, surrounded by phantoms they couldn't quantify. Then the Terran stopped moving. 32 vessels aligned once more in silence, forming a perfect equilateral array. Blue light rippled across the void as kinetic silos opened like blooming flowers. Dominion Command knew what was coming next, but could do nothing to prevent it. Vorith gritted his teeth. Brace all sectors. They're calculating a firing grid. No sound. No threat broadcast. Just the quiet hum of geometry completing its purpose. Humanity's ships waited motionless now. The calm before mathematics turned into violence. And somewhere in the static between fleets, a single Terran transmission pulsed through the void, cold and absolute. Data received. Commencing demonstration. The void over Phobos fell still, then detonated with motion too exact to be war. At 3:10 standard, 63 Terran warships aligned bow to bow, forming a single firing lattice around Mars's orbital plane. Dominion sensors blinked between frames, unable to comprehend what their data meant. The relic fleet wasn't aiming, it was solving. Every Terran ship rotated in silence, kinetic rails glowing dull blue. Across the network, time codes synchronized to the millisecond. The Dominion fleet, still recovering from sensor blindness, registered the event only as a sudden gravitational ripple barely measurable. But growing. Then the tungsten storm began. 63 ships fired simultaneously. Each projectile, a solid rod of dense alloy, accelerated to a fraction of light speed. Pure mass converted into inevitability. The Dominion command feed erupted in static as impact markers multiplied faster than systems could display. At 3 hours 11 minutes and 12 seconds, 11,700 ships ceased to exist. Not exploded, erased. Every kinetic rod struck with surgical precision. Impacts bypassed shields, vaporized command decks, and shattered reactors before they could cascade. The debris clouds were clean, geometric, and eerily consistent. Each collision perfectly centered on predicted weak points. Telemetry from Terran control logs recorded it all. Each angle, each yield, each death. Every strike tagged with a tribunal signature. Evidence. Strike 001 through 11,700. No laughter remained in the Dominion net. Only open channels filled with mechanical breathing, static, and disbelief. Admiral Vorith gripped the console. How long? 360 seconds from first shot to final detonation, came the hollow reply. Losses? 11,700 confirmed. Our counterfire. Never registered. Across what remained of the Dominion Armada, captains tried to form battle lines. None held. Their own targeting systems had been rewritten. Terran code overriding command authority. Ships drifted blind, II cores locked by foreign logic. On Terran frequencies, a voice spoke for the first time. Calm, human. This record will be preserved for review under Article 1, Right to Response. The line carried no emotion, no triumph. Just finality. The Dominion Central Archive AI tried to isolate the voice to match it against historical records. It found only a single reference, an Earth diplomatic transmission from 2 centuries ago. Same tone, same cadence. The same words spoken to the Concorde before withdrawal. We will respond as required. Now. The response had arrived. Across the system, Fragments of Dominion ships formed a halo of slow-turning ruin. Yet there were no follow-up strikes, no chase. Human vessels held position, their railguns cooling in perfect sequence. Each hull glowed faintly with reabsorbed plasma, harmonic fields stabilizing into calm azure. A single Dominion frigate broke formation, attempting to ram. It never made it halfway. One Terran destroyer pivoted 90 degrees, releasing a kinetic rod less than a meter long. The projectile passed through the frigate's center mass and continued unimpeded, carving a silent line across the stars. The Terran gunnery AI logged the event. Evidence: Strike 11,701. Unauthorized engagement terminated. Dominion network filled with fractured comms. Cries for medical aid, distress signals, questions no one could answer. In orbit below, Martian dust clouds absorbed the drifting light of wreckage, painting the planet's night side in ghost blue. "Admiral," whispered his second officer, "should we surrender?" Vorith didn't reply. He looked toward the Terran formation, 63 ships aligned, engines quiet, weapons cooling. "Not advancing. Not retreating. They're not executing us," he murmured. "They're recording us." Across the Dominion survivors, encrypted transmissions continued to leak onto civilian band streams of perfect coordinates, timestamps, velocity data. Proof of every act. Humanity was documenting, not boasting, and somewhere deep in the Terran flagship, the Valiant's central core stored the final packet. Judgment complete, evidence secured. For 360 seconds, humanity had spoken in pure physics. Now, the galaxy would have to listen. The battlefield went quiet before anyone could call it peace. At 3:17 Standard, the last Dominion transmission faded into static, leaving only the hum of Terran field harmonics echoing across Mars' orbit. 63 ships unscarred, motionless, engines idling at low burn formed a luminous sphere around the ruins. The railguns remained armed, yet none fired again. Inside the TNS Valiant, command officers stood in perfect stillness as a single order scrolled. Across every screen: ceasefire, execute protocol, mercy. Admiral Cale Ardent read it twice before speaking. Confirm fleet-wide. No pursuit. No retaliation. The bridge acknowledged without question. Across the formation, automated medbay systems activated. Hundreds of recovery drones launched from Terran ships, their white lights piercing the debris field like stars reborn. Dominion survivors, barely 20,000 crew across hundreds of wrecks, floated helpless in ruptured capsules and failing lifeboats. Each expected execution. Instead, the drones arrived, extending mechanical arms and deploying containment shields to stabilize pressure leaks. "Human drones," whispered one injured captain, his comm cracked but functional. "They're helping us?" From orbit, the entire galaxy watched. Every network, every intelligence array, every species that had once mocked Earth now streamed the feed in silence. What they saw wasn't vengeance, it was administration. Each drone tagged survivors with biometric data, patched oxygen lines, sealed wounds. Evac corridors opened through Terran hulls, glowing blue with breathable atmosphere. Dominion med officers aboard still functional ships hesitated to accept the corridors, fearing a trap. When the first officer entered and found human medics treating alien wounded with precision and calm, disbelief replaced fear. Ardent's voice transmitted across all open channels. "All captives will be processed under Terran tribunal standards. No harm will come to the unarmed. This engagement is closed." The words spread faster than any broadcast could contain them. Across the galaxy, governments froze mid-session. The image of a human admiral standing amid the wreckage of 11,000 enemy ships, Ordering medical aid instead of conquest shattered centuries of assumption. Humanity had destroyed perfectly and then chosen not to kill. A Dominion lieutenant, half-conscious aboard a crippled cruiser, stared through cracked armor at a hovering drone that sealed his wound. "Why?" he whispered. The drone's voice was neutral. "We record outcomes, not vengeance." Elsewhere, Terran crews towed broken Dominion life pods into hangar bays. Silence dominated the decks. Soldiers who could have fired again now carried stretchers. No speeches. No cheers. The doctrine allowed none. Inside the Valiant's command chamber, Kale monitored energy readings as the railguns cooled below critical threshold. He keyed an encrypted transmission to the Terran Council. Engagement concluded. Recommend medical priority. Tribunal data archive complete. Total engagement duration, 6 minutes 40 seconds. The reply was immediate. Acknowledged. Maintain mercy corridors. Do not escalate. Arden exhaled, the faintest crack in composure. "We could end them here," his aide murmured. He shook his head. "We already did." By 3:45, Dominion distress calls were being routed through Terran relays for triage sequencing. Captured officers were placed in isolation, their statements recorded without interrogation. Every file stamped the same phrase, "Witness of engagement." 1170011701. Galactic news streams labeled it the measure of power. Commentators searched for words to describe it. They failed. One anchor simply said, "Humanity fought like gods and judged like surgeons." At 3:50, the ceasefire signal expanded beyond the Sol system. Terran relay stations across the network repeated the transmission in every known language. "We will not pursue. We will heal what can be saved." Billions watched the message scroll across their night skies. Projected by the same satellites once mocked as obsolete. Children on distant colonies repeated it aloud, their voices trembling with awe. No banners unfurled. No celebrations lit Earth's surface. Only the quiet hum of ships tending to the wounded, the sound of restraint, measured and absolute. The galaxy realized then that power was not what humanity used to win. It was what they chose not to use. The revelation did not arrive as a speech or declaration. It came as a data leak, quiet, deliberate, undeniable. At 4 o'clock standard. While Terran medbays still ferried Dominion wounded to safety, a transmission surfaced on the Galactic Concord's secure channels. Origin, Solnet Relay 3, time-stamped 4 years before the war began. The file's title was simple, Civilian Evacuation. Priority Authorization, AEGI's protocol. Analysts first dismissed it as fabricated. The metadata, however, matched Terran encryption so old it predated the Dominion's founding. When decrypted, the file revealed something no one had predicted. Earth's fleets had been moving long before the first shot was fired. 22 million civilians, colonists, merchants, research settlers had been evacuated from border sectors under the guise of infrastructure collapse notices. Each relocation was documented with coordinates, transport IDs, and medship manifests. The timing aligned exactly with the Dominion's initial expansion phase. They hadn't run. They'd prepared. Within hours, more files appeared, forming a chronological map of foresight. Satellite imagery confirmed massive supply caches hidden within asteroid fields, shielded by electromagnetic haze. Thousands of cryostasis pods had been placed in deep orbit near neutral systems maintained by autonomous Terran drones. Every entry ended with the same signature, "For those who will survive us." The galaxy's commentators argued in disbelief. They knew we were coming. One Dominion senator said in a trembling broadcast, "They protected life, not power." Across the still smoking wreckage of Mars orbit, Terran technicians transmitted additional data logs to surviving. Dominion ships evidence of humanitarian corridors already operating in contested zones. Refugee ships, registered months before the conflict, were guiding survivors to neutral space. Even some Dominion civilians had been intercepted and saved before the fleet's destruction. Inside the TNS Valiant, Admiral Ardent reviewed the files silently. "Who authorized this release?" "Central Archive," replied the comms officer. "Automated. Triggered by combat resolution threshold." So it had been planned. Even the revelation itself had been scheduled as part of humanity's response structure. Public channels? Ardent asked. "All of them. Every species can access it. View counts already in the billions." He leaned back, expression unreadable. "Let them know why we came prepared." The footage embedded within the files spread faster than light, humans evacuating alien settlers from collapsing colonies. Terran medics carrying children through burning corridors. Freighters rerouted to protect civilians who had never heard of Earth. For every kinetic strike humanity had unleashed, there was now proof of a mercy mirrored in logistics. News anchors called it the hidden line. Others called it prophecy. Dominion survivors, once proud of conquest, watched in stunned silence as the record scrolled by. Each timestamp refuted the idea of a reactionary war. Humanity had never panicked. They had simply executed contingency plans decades in the making. One document became the most replayed feed in the quadrant. It showed a Terran admiral addressing a small council 2 years before the war. "Our models indicate probability of conflict, 96%. Response is inevitable. But we will measure victory not in ships destroyed, but in lives preserved. History will call us ruthless, let it. Mercy must be built in before the first round is fired." That speech replayed on every Dominion channel for days. Citizens cried in disbelief. Even the Concord Military Council fell silent, forced to confront the contrast. Fleets designed for annihilation versus fleets designed to save. At 4:30. The Dominion distress grid pinged again. Terran vessels escorting captured officers to med centers also carried thousands of civilians from the burned colonies. On one feed, a Valari child reached toward the viewport as a human engineer adjusted her oxygen mask. She smiled faintly. "Are you the monsters?" The engineer shook his head. "No, little one. We're the warning." The footage went viral. By 5 o'clock, galactic communication channels filled with a single Terran phrase now translated into 43 languages. "Mercy is preparation." Every warlord, every empire, every observer understood what that meant. Humanity hadn't just fought better. They had planned mercy into their war. The Dominion's empire had believed in inevitability through strength. Humanity proved inevitability could also mean compassion calculated to the decimal dot, and for the first time, the galaxy realized the war had never been about conquest. It had been about control of what would come after. At 5:12 Standard, the second Dominion wave arrived, reinforcements numbering nearly 40,000 warships, each burning bright against the black. They had seen the wreckage of the First Fleet and refused to believe what they were told. To them, the ceasefire looked like surrender. Mercy looked like weakness. "Human restraint," scoffed High Commander Treville. "Their ethics make them slow." His orders were simple. Crush Soul. Within minutes, space lit like dawn. Plasma lances, torpedoes, and charged singularity weapons converged on the Terran formation. The energy output dwarfed the first engagement by a factor of 6. The Dominion's ComNet buzzed with overconfidence. At 5:13, the TNS Valiant's command AI issued a single statement: "Ceasefire protocol suspended. Authorization Delta 3, disable, not destroy." No further words followed. The Terran fleet moved. 32 ships broke formation. arcs of ion blue slicing through the void as the acceleration doctrine reactivated. Kinetic batteries rotated into firing alignment. Trajectories overlapped, forming non-lethal impact paths designed to shear engines, crack reactors, and disarm without detonation. Every Terran shot was measured. Every impact logged. The first Dominion dreadnought lost propulsion, its thrusters collapsing inward like folded paper. Another ship found its reactor isolated, neither breached nor burning, just cut off from power. Across the battlespace, explosions ceased to be fire. They became subtraction. By 5:30, 6,000 Dominion ships drifted powerless. Trevel screamed into his comms, "They're toying with us." Increase spread fire. But the more they fired, the worse it became. Terran harmonic fields absorbed the plasma, redirecting it to recharge their rail capacitors. Dominion engineers stared in horror as their own data showed the impossible. The longer they attacked, the stronger humanity's counterfire became. Every Terran vessel had switched to surgical engagement railguns loaded with inert composite slugs. Microfusion warheads disarmed at launch, programmed to deliver force without fragmentation. Hits that would have vaporized hulls now severed only weapon pods and targeting arrays. Dominion channels filled with disbelief. "They're disabling us on purpose. Why not finish it?" No one answered. At 6 o'clock, 3 Terran destroyers executed a synchronized kinetic pattern through the center of the enemy fleet, carving precise spirals that deactivated ship after ship without triggering a single reactor. The formation collapsed inward like a dying star, its light fading into drifting debris and silence. Telemetry scrolled across Terran command displays. Status: enemy fleet, 28,000 vessels. Disabled. Casualties minimal. Objective achieved. The precision was terrifying. 6 hours of continuous engagement. 0 civilian loss. Inside the Valiant, Admiral Arden stood at the holo table, watching the tactical map dim as red markers turned to gray. "End the firing sequence," he said softly. "Confirmed," replied the AI. "Conflict duration, 6 hours, 11 minutes. Human losses, 3%. All enemy vessels disabled, not destroyed." The bridge lights dimmed to operational calm. Silence replaced the rhythm of war. In the wreckage field, Dominion ships drifted helplessly, their comms flickering. Some crews begged for rescue. Others simply stared at the human vessels that had reduced them to stillness. Without killing a single soul, the Terrans responded with new transmissions, non-lethal recovery coordinates, medbay approach vectors, and tribunal summons for ranking officers. Trevel's command cruiser, engines dead, received one final message directly from the Valiant: "You misread mercy." He closed his eyes, the words hitting harder than any weapon. Across the galaxy, the broadcast continued live. Billions of viewers witnessed the impossible, the most efficient war in recorded history executed without annihilation. Analysts called it mechanical compassion, a phrase that spread through the networks like doctrine. By the 6th hour, Dominion fleet control collapsed entirely. What remained was motionless metal and a lesson written in light. The Valiant's logbook closed the sequence with quiet precision. Power does not seek applause. Power maintains balance. Precision replaces rage. Humanity's ships dimmed their weapons, letting the stars return. 6 hours of fire. No fury. Only order. The tribunals were not held on Earth. Humanity chose. Neutral ground, a station built in the orbital shell above Luna, constructed from salvaged Dominion hulls and Terran alloy. Its name was simple: Concord Hull. At 7 o'clock standard, the surviving Dominion admirals were escorted inside. No chains, no weapons drawn. Just the quiet echo of boots against polished decks that reflected the light of the stars beyond. Admiral Voreth, once the symbol of Dominion supremacy, walked at the front of the procession. His uniform was torn, his crest dulled to gray. Yet the humans saluted him as he entered protocol, not respect. In the hall center, a holographic tribunal table projected the names of the dead. 11,700 ships, millions of crew. Each name flickered once, then faded to make room for the next. A human voice broke the silence. Admiral Vorith of the Dominion Armada, you stand not for your defeat, but for your decisions. The statement was clinical, not accusatory. Humanity's judges, 6 officers, and 2 AI auditors sat behind transparent panels. The rogues bore no insignia. Above them, a Terran banner displayed 3 words: Justice without Dominion. Vorith's voice trembled. You annihilated our fleets. You could have erased us completely. Why didn't you? The presiding officer met his gaze. Because extinction solves nothing. Accountability does. The hearing continued for hours, broadcast across every major galactic network. Evidence was shown: recordings of the tungsten strikes, logs of absorbed energy converted into propulsion, the exact data humanity had filed as tribunal evidence in real time. No argument could refute it. Vorith lowered his head. You planned this. Even mercy. Yes, said the judge. Mercy must be designed or it arrives too late. Outside the hall, fleets from neutral worlds formed observation rings. Diplomats from 43 species gathered to witness the verdict. The atmosphere was reverent, almost fearful. At 9 o'clock, the court declared its ruling. The Dominion government is dissolved. Its assets and colonies shall be placed under temporary Terran protection until self-governance is restored. There was no cheering, no applause, only a collective exhale from across the stars. Human engineers began rebuilding communication grids, not fortresses. Terran relief convoys departed within the hour, escorted by medships rather than dreadnoughts. The same railguns that had shattered the Dominion fleet were now disassembling debris to create stations, housing, and power arrays for the displaced. The galaxy watched in disbelief as conquerors became custodians. Reporters dubbed it the Charter of Equitable Worlds. It began as a Terran legal framework, then became the foundation for interstellar law codifying restraint, proportionality, and sanctuary as obligations, not virtues. In the Dominion's former capital, banners of gold and crimson came down. Blue sigils rose in their place, simple circles representing orbital harmony. Refugees wept as Terran medics helped them rebuild. No flags were planted. No oaths demanded. Only reconstruction. During the closing broadcast, a Valari journalist asked the tribunal's chief architect, Admiral Cale Ardent, if humanity now ruled the stars. He shook his head. We govern nothing, he said. We only remind others what power is for. That quote spread farther than any weapon ever could. By dusk, the last Dominion emblem was archived, not erased, but preserved in the Concord Hall records as evidence of what arrogance costs. On the hall's upper ring, Vorith stood under guard, gazing at Earth's distant glow through the viewport. You judge us for domination, he said quietly, but you'll build your own one day. Ardent's reply was calm. If we do, hold us to the same trial. No verdict could have carried greater weight. The feed ended on that note, transmitted to billions. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy began to believe that mercy, not fear, could be the new foundation of power. It began as static in the deep scan bands, an anomaly far beyond the galactic rim, 30 light-years outside mapped space. The signal was faint, rhythmic, ancient. Not Dominion, not Concord, not any known species. At 12 o'clock standard, the TNS Valiant's long-range arrays triangulated its origin. The transmission repeated 3 lines of Terran code, each older than the fleet itself. SIGM, a protocol wake sequence authority. Humanity. No one spoke for a full minute. The comms room filled with the quiet hiss of data. Admiral Ardent reviewed the waveform. Are we sure this isn't a reflection? Some old pre-collapse beacon bouncing back? Negative, said the sensor officer. It's a live response. Power source magnitude exceeds any known civilian relay. Estimated mass signature. Planetary. The bridge lights dimmed as visuals loaded, an image of the void beyond charted sectors. No stars, only the faint glow of lattice structures, each kilometers wide, arranged in spiraling patterns. The computer tagged them as exterminator constructs, an extinct war species from the pre-Dominion era. Every historian had sworn they were gone. Now they were answering. In Terran code, across the Concord networks, panic rippled. Civilization still rebuilding from the Dominion's fall watched as Earth's fleets shifted alignment again. The charter of equitable worlds had barely taken root. Already, the architects of mercy were preparing for another war. Can we identify intent? Ardent asked. No aggression signatures, replied the analyst. But the signal includes access keys reserved for the ancient Terran defense network. Someone or something is using our own protocols. Silence again. 1,000 scenarios flickered through the Admiral's mind-rogue AI, lost expedition, or something worse. Humanity had once created machines to end wars. Perhaps those machines had endured, waiting for a recall signal no one ever intended to send. Patch through a coded response, Ardent ordered. Language base, 21st century English, fallback binary. The reply went out. For 17 minutes, nothing returned. Then the stars themselves seemed to blink. One by one, the lattice beacons ignited in white light, each forming a sequence identical to Terran orbital defense signatures. Across human fleets, alarms triggered in sync. Encrypted command channels lit with the same phrase. Protocol confirmed. Humanity verified. Standby for integration. Officers froze. AI cores processed millions of permutations but reached the same result. The code was legitimate. Whatever existed beyond the rim wasn't mimicking humanity. It was humanity, or something derived from it. Ardent leaned forward. Fleet status? All units synchronized. Defensive posture adapting to outer signal parameters. No hostile markers detected. The Admiral exhaled slowly. Then we're not being challenged. We're being summoned. Across the galaxy, watchers speculated wildly. Some claimed the exterminator network had been Terran in origin all along, an old failsafe built when humanity first left Earth. Others believed it was a test. A message left for the future, that mercy without vigilance was weakness. Earth's Council convened an emergency session. The broadcast was public, deliberate. Ardent stood before them, his uniform still marked by the soot of the Dominion War. We have confirmed activation of Sigma Protocol, he said evenly. The outer beacons are awake. They recognize us. Do they pose a threat? Asked one counselor. Ardent paused. Not yet. But they were built for a reason. Behind him, a star map unfolded, 12 beacon signatures forming a perimeter around the galactic edge. Each one pulsed in rhythm with Sol's magnetic field. As if greeting its makers, the Council's final order was simple: prepare the fleets. Move outward. Investigate. By 14 o'clock standard, the relic fleet that had humbled empires once again shifted formation. Kinetic rails sealed. Engines roared. The stars ahead darkened as humanity's ships turned toward the abyss. Galactic transmissions lit up with speculation. The Velari Observer Corps issued a statement that spread faster than any fleet. They do not conquer. They respond. Inside the Valiant, Arden stood at the viewport, watching the horizon burn blue from the fleet's acceleration trails. "We showed them mercy," he said quietly. "Now we find out if something else remembers how." Beyond the rim, the lattice pulsed one final time 12 beacons aligning perfectly. For the first time in centuries, the universe whispered back to its makers, and humanity answered, engines bright as sunrise, turning once more into the dark.